What's up, my name is Guy. I'm a full-time filmmaker obsessed with self-development. Welcome back to my channel where I discover tips, tricks, and tools that can make your day by day a bit more optimized, a bit more efficient, and hopefully help you on your way to creating more inspiration and creativity in your life. Today we're going to talk about Roam versus Notion. And I said I was going to do this for a while. A lot of other people have compared these two platforms. So instead of just giving the pros and cons for each, I want to share with you how I'm using both platforms side by side and my kind of rule book for what goes into Roam and what goes into Notion. This is intended as a bit of a guide to show you what worked for me, and hopefully you can extrapolate some of those rules to create your own and set up workflows that uniquely work for you, because that's the most important, I think, when comparing these two platforms. It really depends on what your objectives are on a project by project basis or in your life operating system as a whole. So I'm going to show you what goes into my Roam and what goes into my Notion in my personal system and how I structure each of those systems on the respective platforms. Here is a list for my rules of what goes into Roam and what goes into Notion. And I'll explain each of these in more details in just a second. If it's hot, it goes into Roam. If it's creative, it goes into Roam. If it's unstructured knowledge, it goes into Roam. If it requires a system, it goes into Notion. If it requires long-term tracking, it goes into Notion. If it is structured knowledge, it goes into Notion. So let's explain what each of these means. If it's hot, it goes into Roam. What do I mean by this strange statement? It means that if it's an idea, if it's something that needs to be captured quickly, if it's hot in your mind and it needs to go into your journal, it goes into Roam. Why? Because there are no extra steps that you need to take between having your idea and writing it down. You don't have to think about where it goes into your system or what page to put it in. It goes in your daily notes section in your Roam. If it's creative, it goes into Roam. I believe Roam is incredibly powerful for any creative project, especially if it comes to taking a collection of unstructured ideas that you've collected over time, putting it into your sidebar and using that to create a structured outline for any given project. And then you can put that outline into your sidebar and use it to create your refined draft or your final versions. So what I do is I keep a shortcut for my creative projects page and putting it in my left shortcuts list here. I usually like to have 3 different projects in here at least, but this is just kind of like a collection of the ideas that are most present in my mind, so that whenever I feel like I have an opening to work on a new creative project, I just go to this page and I see what is most pressing at this point in time. If it is unstructured knowledge, it goes into Roam. What do I mean by that? Unstructured knowledge is anything that you come across on a day by day that you want to retain. So that can be an idea, a thought, it can be a specific inspiration that you've had from really anywhere and you want to write it down, it goes into my Roam. It can be anything that automatically links to my Roam through my set of integrations, which I'm linking to below. I even go as far as transcribing some of the voicemails that I share with friends, family, business partners. I run it through otter.io and I use those transcripts and pull them into my Roam. And the reason I do this is so that if I'm working on a project in the future and I'm looking for more inspiration on that specific theme, I can just go into my unlinked references and it's going to show me, among other things, all of the mentions of that specific topic in my stream of consciousness voicemails that I share with people on a regular basis when I'm talking back and forth on WhatsApp, for example. So it seems very convoluted. It seems like very messy when I go into my voicemails recording page, but it's not there to be retained in and of itself. It's there to be strategically linked in the future to a specific project or topic or theme or idea that I'm journaling on, and I can just go into my unlinked references and collect the relevant links from voicemails if they apply in the future. Now, if it requires a system, it goes into Notion. So that is databases, creation pipelines, project Bibles, anything that belongs in a highly structured environment where it just makes more sense to give that upfront thought to where you want to place it in your system. It's going to cost you more time to try and find it afterwards if you've placed it somewhere where it doesn't belong. And so it's worth it spending that little extra time to make sure that within the system that you've set up, you're putting this new piece of information where it actually belongs. That makes especially sense when you're talking about things like creation pipelines, where you want to keep track of which projects are in scripted stage, which projects are in recording stage if you're talking about video, or which projects are ready for distribution. That can apply to anything, video, film, blogs, anything that you're creating. It makes sense to keep some form of tracked pipeline as you're taking things from A to Z. So this is something I've started developing, so I can open up this page and you can see here I've done a simple little creation machine within this where I can just create these individual cards for videos that I've outlined, videos that I have scripted, etc., and they'll move over into production and into completed. So this is just a really simple and nice way to track where a specific project is at, and then you can go into it and you can see the scripts like so, and toggle them open as we go. If it requires long-term tracking, it goes into Notion. This is a related point. Anything that you want to track over longer periods of time just makes more sense to do it in a database in Notion. So my Notion system is based on August Bradley's PPV structure, which I'm going to link to down below. He's got an excellent series explaining in great detail how he sets up this pillars, pipelines, and vaults system that I have incorporated into my own system. I have just heavily simplified it for me. I think it's amazing what August set up in his personal system. It's just quite a bit too much for me. I stripped away a lot of things and just kept the bare necessities that really improve my life dramatically on a day by day. So this is what you can see here. I'm using August Bradley's daily tracking system. So I just keep track of my main focus for the day. So that could be development of my company, that could be YouTube, that could be a day dedicated to learning. I then link that main focus to a specific pillar. Currently I have 7 pillars that are most important to me in my life. These are things that are longer term. So that could be something like film, that could be something like creating wealth, or that could be something like documenting my learnings more regularly, which is what I'm doing here with this YouTube series. I then write down my principal task for the day. That way I just have one sort of grand task to complete every single day. And I keep track of things like my sleep cycles, whether I meditated, whether I did my French exercises that day, because I'm trying to improve my French. If I do a workout, I link to a separate workout database. And you can see I have not been stretching enough. This is something that I really want to see ticked every single day. It's whether I read on a regular basis and whether I've scheduled. This says scheduled tomorrow. I keep track of my diet out of 5, and I give myself a rating on my output. So these are things that just help me on a day by day. I can then open up these pages and do some more detailed documentation like morning startup, 5-minute journal, that kind of thing. Fundamentally, everything happens in my command center, which you can see here. So again, this is following August Bradley's outline, things about focus and alignment, things that focus on growth, business goals, and personal things. Here you can see my wine notes that I take. Every time I come across a wine I like, I put it in my Notion wine list database. I take a couple of quick notes on them, I give it a subjective rating, and that is going to build over time long term, and it's valuable for me, and maybe 5-10 years from now, it's actually something that I can share with other people, and it might give other people value to see my notes on these particular wines. But this is something I'm building long term, so it's a lot more efficient to do it in Notion in this structured database type of format, as opposed to chopping down my notes in Rome. Yes, I could still easily retrieve them when the time comes, but I just prefer seeing the database build in a structured manner over time. Here you can see my projects database, and again, this is just a very simple outline of the kind of project I'm working on, whether they're active or on the back burner. I try to only have 3 active projects at any given time. I describe it, again, I link it to one of my pillars. That way I always make sure that everything that I work on in some way supports or powers one of these pillars that I've decided is most fundamentally important to my life at this time. And these are things I change, over time, but they stay fairly rigid. And so these are longer term things that I just want to make sure that everything I'm working on, every project in some way feeds into one of these pillars. So that way I don't get too scattered. And then most importantly, I keep track of the progress of the individual project over here, just by putting in how many units I have completed. This can be quite arbitrary at times, but for example, for this Rome video series, I set myself a goal of 10 videos. So I put in how many I've completed, and completed means uploaded, which is why you're only seeing 4 here. And that's gonna keep track here in the progress bar. And that's pretty much it. I don't do much more than that. I use Google Calendar to do the daily tracking of my action items. I don't take care of that in here in Notion. I know a lot of people are. This is something that just hasn't worked for me personally. Maybe I still gotta get more into it. If it's structured knowledge, it goes into Notion. Structured knowledge for me is when I'm taking notes on things that I want to be presentable from day one. So I'm taking great care to chop down my learnings in an organized way. This can apply to taking an online course and you want to share the learnings from that course with your close friend or collaborator. Or again, it's project Bibles. So for any film that I work on with my team, we keep a very structured account of the inspirations, pieces of knowledge, little things that we need reminding of, databases of contacts that are important. We keep them in a very structured environment. That just allows us to share knowledge more efficiently, keep track of how things change over time, and most importantly, it needs to be collected in one place. And I find that the more structure there is, the easier it is to collaborate with other people on a given project. These rules are specific to me, but I believe they make sense when you look at the fundamental structure underlying these two platforms. Start crafting your own rules as you're setting up your workflows, and pay attention to which platform you're naturally gravitating towards more for a specific task. Understanding the fundamental structures underlying these platforms is important for when you're setting up these rules. So the reason why I gravitate more towards Roam is because I believe it most often speeds up my workflow and takes away the inhibition that I have to write things down on a regular basis if I have to do too much thinking about things up front in terms of where it goes in my system. So I noticed that inhibition is a huge pain point for me, and Roam solves this in a very effective and elegant manner. The reason why I use Notion is for workflow organization and for tracking. And I personally haven't come across a platform that does that better than Notion. Notion also looks incredibly good and gives you the freedom to set up pretty much any system you want to set up. So it's really, really powerful for the right things. This freedom is of course a double-edged sword because it makes it harder for people to get going with Notion. You do have to invest a lot of time in setting up a system that works uniquely for you, and you have to iterate it over time, you have to maintain it, and you have to optimize it on a regular basis. But for a lot of tasks like the ones I mentioned, for me that's 100% worth it, because the output that I get, the increased benefits, far outweigh the inputs that I have to give to maintaining my system. I think Notion has taken a lot of things that were already out there and has perfected it with an elegance that I haven't come across anywhere else. Roam, I will say, is doing something I don't think any other app has done before, and that's using backlinks and bidirectional links this powerfully and this effectively. So the key for me is effort. When do I want to invest effort into building and perfecting systems over time? And when do I believe this effort is misplaced or counterproductive? That is something you need to figure out for yourself, and I think it's largely going to happen by trial and error, but hopefully my blueprint can give you some inspirations and get you started faster. I think Roam is a lot more effortless because it hardly ever pulls you out of your stream of consciousness. Notion requires upfront work, so that's building a system that works for you and then regularly maintaining and optimizing that system. This is great for some things and terrible for other things. Roam is effortless because of the associative retrieval, and yes, that is because of the bidirectional links. In turn, it's harder to be as systematic and structured as you can be in Notion, largely because Roam just doesn't have as many features as Notion does. Roam's big claim to fame is the backlinks, and Notion actually followed suit and implemented their own version, but they are clunky at best. And now you may ask, how can a backlink be clunky? It either works or it doesn't work, and that's 100% true. It's not that the Notion backlinks don't work. I think they are misplaced in Notion because fundamentally, Notion is not optimized to work bidirectionally. So Notion is so flexible that with a lot of upfront work, of course, you could build yourself a system that works a lot like Roam, except now all of the flexibility and features that Notion offers get in the way of that effortlessness that makes Roam so great at what it does. Let me show you what it would look like to actually imitate Roam's structure in Notion. You can create a link to a page anytime you want, just like in Roam, but look here, the page opens up. And yes, it links back to the original page, I just put it in, but that's not very useful because for this to really work, I already need to know why I'm creating this page, whether it should be a database or a normal page, and what other content I might want to pull into that page from some of the other pages, because it doesn't just do it for me the way that Roam does. And now, because I get a bit obsessive with these things, I want this page to match the layout of my overall system. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to select the right icon. I'm going to select the right cover page, maybe start thinking about layouts, columns, colors, all of which is great, but it takes me out of that stream of consciousness I was just in. So yes, I can set up relations and link to other pages from here. And all of this is very useful if I have the overall system I'm building at the top of my head here at all times. And like August Bradley says, any good system needs regular maintenance and optimization. So if you like that, if your brain naturally works this way, you're going to want to gravitate towards Notion more. And you're going to have fun building out better and more optimized ways to track things in your daily life and to create grander operating systems around them. So ultimately, everything that I put into Notion are things where I can see the grander system right away, where it makes sense to stop and think, how do I set up this database? What does it need to link to? How can I do this most effectively to save me time down the line? But everything that's quick and scrappy and just needs to be recorded somewhere so I can reference it again in the future in a sort of clever associative way, that goes into Roam. If I were only allowed to use one of the two platforms, you guessed it, I would use Roam. Why? Because I believe Roam's fundamental structure is what makes it so powerful. And I think with a lot of iteration and optimization over time, Roam could, in theory, implement a lot of the functions that Notion offers and incorporate it into its fundamental structure without hurting the neural network connectivity that Roam is built on. So what that would mean is just giving the user more functionality to organize things within pages a bit more deliberately and a bit more effectively. And they're already working on this. I mean, new features are coming out regularly, and you can already do a lot of really structured things in Roam. But again, the core, the most powerful thing about Roam is this free-form associative way that it lets you record thoughts in. On the flip side, I have a hard time seeing how Notion could replicate the powerful elements of Roam without having to kind of tear up the entire foundation of what makes Notion so powerful. And I don't see why they would do that. I think they're going to stick to, the elements that make Notion great and keep on improving on those and keep on making them more powerful and more effective. Whereas Roam is going to be able to implement some of those things, probably not as dramatically or as well as Notion does, but it's going to offer its users more and better functionality over time while maintaining and strengthening its foundation that makes it so great at what it does. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know which of those platforms you like better and why. And if you have any suggestions on how I could improve my personal systems, please let me know. Please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. That is it for this week. In the next 2 videos, we're going to look at how to study most effectively with Roam and how to optimize your paper writing, your essay writing, using the structure of Roam. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Leave a comment. It's going to help me out a lot. And I really appreciate your time, your attention. Thank you. I'll see you next week.